Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob Staton, Adam Nathan, Robbie Williams here. We have got a lot to talk about, so let's get straight into it. And we were going to talk about my mock draft and what I projected, and I thought, what a cool mock draft to talk about. I've come up with this trade that has Atlanta trading up to number 3, and they're having official visits with Anthony Richardson, as are Las Vegas, as are the Tennessee Titans, and one of these teams is going to trade up to number 3. And I was going to introduce that prospect to you guys and what it would mean for Seattle number 5. But then something else has happened just before we come on air. A couple of reports have emerged, and the first one is from Tony Pauline, friend of the blog, and he has been doing the rounds. He's been attending the pro days, and he's been speaking to people who were at Florida's pro day today. And I'm just going to read this to you. He says, speculation from league insiders during Florida's pro day is that the Seattle Seahawks could be the team that leapfrogs the Indianapolis Colts and trades up with the Cardinals to secure Anthony Richardson. He then says several reasons were given. The cost to move up won't be much for the Seahawks, who have another first-round pick, the 20th selection. Additionally, the general manager and coach who draft Richardson have to be on the safe footing. Even Russell Wilson couldn't get Carolyn Schneider fired. Finally, Richardson is the type of freaky athlete that the Seahawks have drafted in the past and had success with. Think Tariq Woolen and DK Metcalf. So Tony Pauline saying there that there is a chance that the Seahawks could move up to number 3. And then I sort of retweeted that, and somebody called Kenneth sent me a link, a screen grab of an article in The Athletic, which is from Vic Tafur. And this is the section that I was sent. Top 4 quarterbacks will likely be gone in the top 4 picks. He reports for the Raiders for The Athletic. The Raiders have hit the road and have sat down with the 4 different quarterbacks, but the buzz at Monday night's NFL party with owners, general managers, coaches, agents, and reporters hitting the open bar, which sounds great, was that all 4 quarterbacks will be long gone by the time the Raiders pick at number 7. That's relevant, assuming the Raiders aren't blowing smoke and are really interested in the 4 quarterbacks, given they just gave Garoppolo a huge contract. The buzz is that the Seahawks will jump up from number 5 to number 3 to grab either Richardson or Levis, as Stroud and Young are expected to go 1 and 2. The Cardinals can move down to number 5 and still get the top defensive player, as the Colts are expected to also draft a quarterback at number 4. So there we go. So, Robbie, you mentioned off air that you were not aware of this thing. So we've now got 2 NFL reporters both saying there's buzz that the Seahawks are going to trade up to number 3. And they've just been at the league meetings, people like Victor Thor, where everybody's there from the NFL. So that is when speculation takes place. Just give us your reaction, Robbie, to that.
Well, my initial gut reaction is, if you like a guy, you're in the 5th pick and you want to go get him, then absolutely go get him. I think we've talked about this before. Just the opportunity to secure whatever player it is. I mean, I people are going to say, Will Anderson, or I'm sick of talking about him, but Jalen Carter, or whoever the case might be, or the quarterbacks. If you want the guy that you want and you are dead set on him being your franchise, you go get him. And if that's the opportunity that they are going to do, I don't know how the Cardinals are going to trade with us. I think that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, I think we'll probably have to give up a little bit more for them to actually move down. That would be my only concerning piece of that. But if you really want whoever it is, then you go get him. You're only this you don't get the opportunity very often to make these selections. And if you got the draft cap, I mean, I think this is part of the plan the whole time. I mean, honestly, I think they were probably always planning on packaging a couple first to move up anyways before Geno went off. And then Geno went off and they were like, well, things kind of changed their mindset a little bit. I think originally their plan was to draft a quarterback. I think that was originally the whole plan. And I think it changed a little bit with how well Geno played, and probably even a little bit with how well Locke played. So I think they're, probably just in, Locke playing in the, seeing how he's developing or whatever. But getting both those guys back, I mean, I think they have the leverage now to sit back and kind of do what they really want. And they have the draft capital to go do exactly what they want. So I think it's a great situation for them. If that's what they want to do, go do it.
I've got a few thoughts on this, but Adam, what is your reaction to the prospect of Seattle moving up per these reports that there is speculation that the Seahawks could be the team that moves up to number 3?
I've said, I think since December time, that it would be a real shame to, I don't want to say squander, but use that 5th pick on a player who isn't necessarily going to be a transcendent star, or at least the potential transcendent star for the roster. And I've been pretty, focused on getting a QB with that pick for the whole time. It's not to say that Will Anderson wouldn't necessarily be a good option, but there's a lot of me that thinks that the way in which Seattle sort of do their defense, the opportunity for a defensive end to flourish isn't necessarily always there. And he might be the kind of player that lights up another team. But the way in which Seattle play, he could be a good player. He could probably be, maybe Nwosu level, and no one's going to sniff at that. But you probably would sniff at that with hopefully the only chance you're going to get to pick in the top 5 in 2 decades. Let's hope that's the case. And so, if anything, I almost think Richardson becomes a safe pick for Pete and John, because everyone is saying the same thing. It's not the kind of thing where if they did trade up to 3 and took Richardson, you're not going to have many naysayers saying, well, I'm not sure about that, because everyone is talking about him. And it's almost the case of, if you swing and miss on a guy like that, I think most fans would give you a pretty good pass on that, because we're all talking about it. We're all thinking it. All the buzz is there that Richardson has got the highest ceiling. And, the Seahawks team is a good, solid team right now. But in what I perceive to be quite a star-driven league, there's not that many players that you're going into training camp thinking, there's my guy, there's my guy, there's my guy. And whilst it's not a tangible thing, the buzz that someone like a Richardson could give you, I don't think anyone could argue with the process there. And really, all we can ask for is good process from the team, because most draftniks get 50% of what they say wrong. So it's hard. Get the process right, and I'm not going to have any complaints. And I think that would be such a buzz move for the team to make that I'd be absolutely all for it.
So what I think about this, there's a few things. First of all, my initial thought as actually it kind of emerged as Robbie was talking there, I kind of feel like, why would the Seahawks need to move up to number 3? The only reason the Seahawks would need to move up to number 3 is because it's to stop somebody else moving up to number 3. So what they can offer Arizona that Las Vegas and Atlanta and Tennessee can't is the ability to stay in the top 5. And if the Seahawks were to take a quarterback, still get the best defensive player at number 5. Essentially, the player they'll take at 3, they could take at 5. That's the offer. That's the reason why you would trade up. However, I've never really felt that the Seahawks are sort of absolutely all in on drafting a quarterback. I thought that it's an option. It's a definite option. I've always kind of felt like they've got the 5th pick, and if Will Anderson's there, they'll take him. If it's 4 quarterbacks to start with, they'll take him. And if it's a quarterback who's left at 5, they'll take him. But you get into a whole world of different situations there when you're actually talking about, no, there's one quarterback they have to have. They have to get up to number 3. They have to prevent Raiders, Falcons, Titans, whoever, Colts trading up to number 3. That's a very different situation that I haven't really ever personally felt that the Seahawks are in that kind of zone or in that world. So yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure how likely that is. And if you're the Cardinals, how could you trust the Seahawks? Is the other thing I would say. Like, I think the Seahawks will love Will Anderson. And if you trade with the Seahawks, what if the Seahawks just take Will Anderson at number 3? And then that unless the Cardinals like, well, we don't mind, we'll take whoever else at number 5, Tyree Wilson, Christian Gonzalez, and actually they don't care, and they can quantify it that way. But if their aim is to move down to number 5 and still take the player they take at number 3, how could you trust the Seahawks are going to definitely go? The Seahawks can't write on a bit of paper, IOU, we promise not to take a quarterback, signed John Schneider, and then he hands like a ripped up piece of A4 to the general manager of the Cardinals. That just doesn't seem to. So I don't know how you could trust Seattle in that. in that situation. And the other thing I think of is the Cardinals have just appointed a new GM, and is the first thing he's going to do is trade down with a division rival so that they can draft a player who looks like a potential superstar quarterback. I mean, imagine if instead of just trading up for Patrick Mahomes with whoever was at number 10, Kansas City had traded up with the Denver Broncos to get Patrick Mahomes, or the Raiders. Those teams would never be able to forgive that GM for, hey, Chiefs, have a generation of Patrick Mahomes and 2 Super Bowls and a third that he lost. I mean, if this works out and the Seahawks became the superstar we think he might become, he would never live that down. And does he really want that to be his first move as an NFL GM, Robbie? So there's a lot here to sort of get into. I'm not sold on this, but clearly there's something here. It's not just Tony saying it; it's Victor Ford saying it as well. There is some buzz here now, unless this buzz is manufactured because they want to force it. Maybe it's a full court press to get other teams to move up into number 3 because actually they are. Maybe that's all that's going on here, Robbie, and it is just a game of poker. But I am fascinated by all of the possibilities here.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It could be a smokescreen and trying to get another team to move up. I think, if they're realistically going to trade, Arizona just doesn't seem like a logical spot for it. More likely, in my opinion, I know people say Houston won't trade, but why wouldn't they? If there's been talk about them not even taking a quarterback, and the opportunity for them to draft a defensive lineman as well. I mean, they brought in DeMarco Ryans from the Niners, and he comes from that scheme, so he might not be ready to pull the trigger on a quarterback. He might want to go D-line. So why wouldn't he want to trade back to 5? I mean, and get another pick if he could secure another pick. That seems like a more likely scenario to me than trading with Arizona. And something that I would, if you're going to move up to 2, then your possibility of getting exactly who you want are right there. So I can see that more, that being a bigger option for them than actually trading with Arizona. I just don't see that being a realistic scenario. But I can see, 4 quarterbacks going in the top 4. I mean, I talked about it a few weeks ago. I just said I could see a scenario where a team trades with Arizona and takes the quarterback that they want. And your latest mock kind of proves that it can happen. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not even convinced Anthony Richardson was not going to be number 1. I still think he has an opportunity to. I think teams can talk themselves into it or talk themselves out of things so easily. So there's a lot to go. I don't even think they know who they're taking yet, to be honest with you.
I've had a super chat from Slacker Hero. Says, let's do it. Trade up for Anthony Richardson. I'm hyped. Thank you, Slacker Hero. If you have a super chat, send them in to us here. If you have a question, super chat in, and we will answer that for you. Yeah, Adam, I don't really know what to make of this, and I'm starting to agree with Robbie's assertion that it's going to be 4 out of 4 to begin this draft with quarterbacks. I mean, people keep saying it's not a good quarterback class. I mean, how is it not a good quarterback class if the first 4 picks are all going to be quarterbacks? Then it's unheard of. But it just seems like it's trending that way now. There's a lot more buzz around Arizona. I think it's telling that the Raiders and the Falcons and the Titans are meeting with Richardson, and I think the league's intrigued by him, and they think we can get up to number 3. The Cardinals have got a lot of work to do, and perhaps don't think they're 1 player away, so might be able to move around the board. It's just Seattle's intentions, Adam. That I want to know what are they doing here? Like, are they legit? Like thinking we need to go up and get this one specific quarterback, and we've fallen for Levis or Richardson, and we've got to go and get him. I mean, I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility, because I think both Richardson and Levis are like the John Schneider style quarterbacks. They're the types he goes for. But I also just wonder whether they're so determined for somebody to move into that pick so that Will Anderson falls to them, who is great scheme fit, great attitude. They might think he's special. I personally think he's more really, really good rather than elite. And yeah, that's the kind of the slight issue I'd have. But look, if they stay at 5 and they get Will Anderson, Adam, I will not be complaining. But there is just something about, are you ever going to be here again? You know, can you not just get that quarterback and sort of feel like, okay, that's potentially the next generation of Seahawks football? And as you mentioned, you rightly say, you need some stars, don't you? And the thing about Richardson is, you could well imagine him on the front cover of Madden. You could well imagine him being the face of the NFL in a few years.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through in my head. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about, is this a smokescreen? And, you know, Seattle are trying to play it that teams move up. Where do you think that they're hoping teams move up to? Like, is this the indication that they're moving up? They want teams to move up to 3 to guarantee there's 4 quarterbacks taken, and then they get their pick of everyone else? Because it would be a surprise to me, given how talent poor the Arizona roster is in general, if they didn't move out of 3 anyway, because ultimately they've got so many holes they need to fill that, yes, or, you know, Will Anderson might make a difference to them, but they look at the kind of team that need 3, 4, you know, first round picks in the next 2 years to reboot. So that this idea of the smokescreen, I understand that there's, you know, the element that perhaps you could want the free pickings of the defensive players, but there's almost part of me that thinks that maybe they want teams to trade into their pick. I can't really work it out, because either way they're going to get what they would want by either, you know, a quarterback or Will Anderson or whatever. So the longer it goes on, the more I'm slightly struggling with it, because I don't know. So this is a bit of a ramble. I'm trying to reconcile thoughts in my head whilst I'm saying them. I can't really understand what I think they're smoke screening for.
Well, I do that every single time I do a live stream, Adam. I just talk until I kind of think I know what I want to say, and then it comes out. No, I think it's an interesting one, because I've kind of gone back and forth on this. I think when Pete Carroll spoke to Steve Weiss this week, it sounded very candid to me that they were almost preparing people for, look, there's a chance we're going to take a quarterback here, and you need to sort of square that circle in your own head that we're going to do it because we like these 4 guys. We think it's a rare opportunity. When we don't want to be here again anytime soon, and we may well take one. And I thought, yeah, that to me said in my head, they are telling you what I've felt for a few weeks now, which is I think they like Will Anderson and they like the 4 quarterbacks. They picked 5th overall. One of them's guaranteed to be there, and it's just who lasts. Whoever lasts is going to be the 5th pick. But then when I read these reports, I don't know whether it's legit or not. Now, the Seahawks have not always had the tightest ship in information, because if Chris Mortensen can turn around to Russell Wilson, you know, whenever it was, a few days before the draft, and go, you're going to be a Seattle Seahawk, when he was taken with the 75th overall pick, you know, it wasn't like Seattle had the 2nd pick and Mortensen worked that out. You know, for him to precisely be able to say, you are going to be drafted by Seattle, he obviously knew that Seattle really liked Russell Wilson, or that John Schneider did, and they were going to take him. So there's obviously like some information that does get out and filter through sometimes. And at the league meetings, if the Seahawks are asking around and sort of seeing what's going on and are trying to, you know, and the league gets a sense that they want to move up, then maybe it's just true. Maybe just Pete and John have decided, you know what, we love this quarterback class. We have to have one of these. We don't want to be here again anytime soon. We are going to get a quarterback, and we're just going to take them because we're set up to have that guy sitting and waiting and developing behind Geno Smith. And it might be that they've done that. But I do think there is, I'm sort of more open, Adam, to the idea that they are getting the message out there because they want to drive a market. They want someone to feel, crap, we need to get that number 3 pick before they do, because they think Will Anderson will be there. And I don't think that's because they dislike the quarterbacks, rather than I think they may think Will Anderson is like a missing piece on the defense or something, like he can be a game wrecker, and that they've decided they just need that so badly that they want to do what they can to try and manufacture him lasting to number 5. And if they do trade up to number 3, and I would write an article going, let's say it happened tomorrow, the Seahawks move up to number 3. My article would be, don't rule out this being for Will Anderson. That's what I would put, because I genuinely think that they might rate him as the best player in the draft or the second best player in the draft. So if they do that, then that might be there. We're never going to be here again anytime soon. That's what we're going to take Will Anderson. I don't know. What do you think, Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, it's all possibilities. I mean, at this point, it's so hard. There's going to be so many things that come out too prior to the draft. It's just going to be like, what's real, what's not, what's smokescreen, what's not, where are the motivations? I really wish we had an inside view to John's draft board so we could just have a better understanding of what they're actually thinking and doing. And I'm sure we'll probably understand once the draft actually happens. But I went back and watched more Will Anderson tape yesterday, and the guy is just, he's something else. So I could see them really, really loving Will Anderson, and that's the direction they're wanting to go. And, on the same token, that if they really love a quarterback and they're wanting to trade up and get him, then I could see the scenario where they do that as well. Who knows at this point, really?
Yeah. Will Anderson's, he's a really good player. He's a really good player. I just don't think he's a special bendy edge. I think that he is explosive, powerful, is an alpha male, speaks well to the media, speaks well to his teammates, great family, great background. This is what the word is on him. He's great against the run. I think his get-off's average, which is part of the issue. Really average get-off. And you need to be quick on the get-off if you're going to be an elite pass rusher. And he doesn't bend the arc as well as, like, say, Will McDonald does. And there were a lot of those TFLs and sacks that he had. He was unblocked and he just ran, and his backside pursuit is very good when he's sort of going after running backs. So he gets a lot of TFLs. Not going to get as much as that in the NFL. So there's those are the things to think of here. But I can well imagine them really liking him. And then this might be just an elaborate game to try and get him to number 5. But if they can't make that happen and Will Anderson just goes at number 3, I do think they'll take a quarterback. I think if this is all a ruse, they'd take a quarterback at 5 of one last. I don't think they'll pivot to Tyree Wilson, who is just, for me, unexciting. We've got some super chats. Ty says, Carter off the Raiders board. He has to be off the Seahawks board. Yeah. That's what I'm going to say. Yes.
I'll talk on Carter just for 1 minute. Just 1 minute, and then I want to move on. I understand why people want a Jalen Carter. Like, they think he's going to be the next Chris Jones or that kind of player, and to have someone be the beefiest guy in the middle of the line that's going to cause absolute havoc. I get why you want that. But the realistic thing is, if you look at Carter and the offseason issues he's already having, if you go watch interviews with the guy, he just does not seem like a football guy. And maybe you can say, well, Pete doesn't going to care about that. He's going to get him into the culture, whatever the case might be. He played half the snaps. Like, I understand. Like, you can go see he's taking plays off. And I know every player probably does, but I just think people need to look at it. I think Will Anderson is a much better alpha player that you want on the team than someone like Jalen Carter. I don't know why that continues to be a topic, but I understand why people want a Jalen Carter, like why they're fascinated by the possibility of him. But if you actually watch his tape, you actually watch him, taking plays off. I mean, there's a lot of times he looks absolutely unstoppable, and then there's times where he just looks like absolute hot garbage. So you have to watch the tape and understand the offseason that he's already having. It's getting tiring. I mean, and look, maybe they take him. If they take him at 5, I'll clearly come on here and eat crow. But I'm almost confident in it that they're not going to.
Well, we've talked, Robbie, and the thing is nobody's going to come out and sort of spell this out step by step, because you can't do that. And Todd McShay said, would you want him in the locker room? In your locker room, was the quote from Todd McShay. And there's that. And Robbie and I have spoken. Robbie knows what the crack is here, and so do I. I'm not going to spell it out what some of the concerns are that other people have hinted at, but just to say that based on what you hear, I'd be very surprised if the Seahawks take him. That's it. It's nothing too. It's nothing particularly striking. It's just based on the information. I'd be very, 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 very surprised if he was a Seahawk in the future. It just doesn't. It's just not a fit. I'm afraid it's just not a fit, and I think really it's just time to move on from that. But we aren't going to move on from that. We're going to have 3 more weeks of it. But then if the Seahawks trade up to number 3, we won't. Maybe Pete and John can do us a favour there, because there's no way they're trading up for the guy. So that would end that one once and for all. I actually think he could fall quite a lot. I don't know if you saw it earlier, but he's only got 4 official visits, apparently, according to reports. Like, only 4 teams want him in for an official visit, which if you were going to draft the guy, you'd want to have an official visit with him, wouldn't you? That's where you find out about players, which to me suggests that probably there's quite a few teams. There's been a report today that the Raiders, we mentioned that the Raiders have not got him on their board. I think there's quite a few teams who have not got him on their board anymore. Big Mike says, support the channel, folks. You don't get better Hawks content anywhere else. Love the old school Mariners gear, Robbie. Robbie's ready for some baseball.
Happy opening day to everyone who's a baseball fan.
Yes. Hope the Mariners have a great season. And if you get to the playoffs, and I happen to watch it next year, if you could, have the game finished before the 18th inning or whatever it was, that would be grand.
Oh, the pitch count. I saw something today, a video of the pitch count. Like, they got a new pitch counter, so you have to pitch faster. And they got through half an inning before they got through one pitch. It was crazy.
Wow. Nano says, thank you, Rob and Adam and Robbie. I'm so appreciative of your work, but I really hope that if Schneider is sold on one of these guys, that they go and get him. Don't fug around. Go get him. As we've been discussing, Robbie, pay the iron price was the term. Pay the iron price. I do want one last thing on this before we move on, but I want to get through these super chats. 67 Plush says, I trust John Schneider, but I also trust John to be John. Training up has never been his MO. With Young going early, one of Arizona, one of Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, Will Anderson or Levis will fall. We will live. Which is a fair thing to say, and thank you for all of these super chats, by the way. I think that's definitely a fair thing to say. What I would say, though, is John Schneider did trade up for DK Metcalf, and he did trade up for Tyler Lockett, and he did trade up for Jaron Reed. So when he has traded up, it's generally led to success in the draft. So it's just something to remember. Kevin Mullen says, exposure of Russell Wilson's play last year, the re-emergence of Geno Smith. We trust brain trust to groom the next franchise quarterback. I do. And I think that could be for a new era anyway. I think it might be a post-Carroll era that you sort of see Anthony Richardson starting and shining for the Seahawks. So the final thing I wanted to ask, because they're the super chats now, keep them going. I'll start with you, Adam. What would you give the Arizona Cardinals to move up to 3? What would you be comfortable with? Because Seattle's got 20. I'm still, by the way, people will probably cover this. I count the Miami Dolphins pick in the numbers. I just count that as a forfeited pick. So I've been saying 20, 53, 84, I think. But because, it's one earlier because the Dolphins don't actually have a pick. So you've got 53, 38, 20, and a 3rd round pick. Adam, what are you giving up if you were prepared to move up to number 3?
I'm not very good at this and the values, but I would have if it was for Richardson, I wouldn't move up for Anderson. So, that's just a personal thing. So, but if you said that I was going to get Richardson out of it, I would be more than happy to give up pick number 20 and maybe a 3rd rounder. I don't know how much it would take to do it. But I would have no issue giving up pick 20 for the potential to get your next superstar. And I doubt any Chief fan could even tell you what pick numbers they gave up to move up with Patrick Mahomes. And I doubt they even care or they're missing those picks at all. I think if you have a guy that you think is the guy, then what you give up is inconsequential fluff, to be honest.
Robbie, what would you give up? I'm percolating as to what I would give up, so I need a bit more time to think about it. So, Robbie, what would you give up?
So we kind of talked about this a little bit back when we were the opportunity to possibly trade to the first pick, and before Carolina did. And I remember us saying, well, I don't want to tap into next year's draft, but I also don't want to give up the 20th pick. So for me, I would give up the first, so our fifth, our 53rd, and maybe a second next year to move up and get him. And I don't know if that would be enough. But that would I would consider that. And again, it kind of what Adam was saying, it would depend on who it's for. Now, for me, Anthony Richardson or CJ Stroud, I think are absolutely worth the trade up for. That, and in my opinion, again, and here's the thing: we all have different likes. We all see something that we like in a player, that we think this could be the guy. For me, those two guys I think Anthony Richardson in 2-3 years time could absolutely be the best football player in the NFL. Why would you not want the opportunity? He could also be a flaming bust. I understand that. I get it. Like
Anybody could.
Anybody could, but you shoot your shot when you got a chance. And if you, let's say we don't shoot the shot and he ends up being the best player in the NFL in 3 years time, you're going to be pissed that you didn't give up more to go get him. Yeah. You're going to be mad. You had an opportunity to do it. So you take a chance and roll the dice and hope it works out.
I am halfway through his pro day workout, and he is special. He is a special talent. I will have a write-up tomorrow. I think all the pro days have been good in their own way. I think Bryce Young's was he just wanted to get that out of the way, but I think the other ones have been fantastic. So I'll have a write-up on Anthony Richardson's tomorrow. I don't know what I'd be willing to give up. I think this is why the league meeting was probably quite interesting, and maybe why people think the Seahawks are going to trade up. Because I wonder whether John Schneider has been asking what the other teams are willing to give to trade up. Because if what the Seahawks need to do is they need to know what the other teams are offering. Because they can say, okay, you're getting this from Las Vegas. Deal with us instead, and you get the 5th pick instead of the 7th. Or you get the 5th pick instead of the 8th, or the 5th pick instead of the 11th. So you need to know what the other teams are offering, so that you don't want to bid against yourself, because you're only moving up 2 spots. Now, let's say the Raiders don't want to move up. Let's say the Falcons don't want to move up. It actually could be quite cheap to move up, because if you are saying to the Cardinals, you're going to take that guy anyway, you're just going to take him at 5 instead. What actually is the right compensation for that? I don't think a haul is worth it. And if the Cardinals just want to trade down for the sake of trading down, and then might want to trade down again, I don't know, who knows, then you don't have to go big. But if the Falcons, for example, were willing to offer their 1st round pick next year, I think I'd be willing to do that. Protect your stock this year so that you can build up your defense with your other picks. The Seahawks have got the 20th pick this year. Let's say they're a more improved team next year. Let's say it's the 25th pick instead, or something like that. Would I give up the 25th pick to have Anthony Richardson for the long haul? Hell yes. If that's what you believe in, if John Schneider thinks this guy is the real deal, even if it's Will Levis, if he thinks these guys are the real deal, you do it for the sake of a late 1st round pick. If you're willing to give 2 1st round picks for Jamal Adams, you have to be prepared to invest in the quarterback position. It's as simple as that. And I would do it, do what it takes. But what they can't get into is like a 1st this year, the 20th this year, a 1st next year. They can't do that to move up 2 spots. They've got to use the fact that they're picking so close to Arizona to their advantage, and they've got to know what the other teams are doing. And it all matters what the other teams are doing. But I would be comfortable paying the 2024 1st round pick to move up a couple of spots. That's what I would say. And listen, I don't think this means anything, but I'm just saying, John Schneider had the biggest grin on his face watching Will Levis throw. I'm just saying. Go on the blog. There's a picture of John there. He looks very, very, very happy.
Just quickly, Rob, obviously moving up is the most fun thing possible and the most exciting. Yes. On the other side of it, let's say 4 quarterbacks do go 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Or even let's say Will Anderson goes and it leaves Will Levis at number 5.
Yeah.
Oh, to what extent are you turn the phone off and hand the card in?
Oh,
or
sure.
You would
Yeah,
for any of the 4 quarterbacks and Will Anderson, you wouldn't entertain any sort of trade down at all.
No.
Okay. Because there's part of me that
not at all. If someone said here's 3 1st round picks, you think, well, and then it comes down to your grade. Personally, I think Will Levis is a fantastic football player and he's perfectly suited to the Seahawks. If I was a different team playing in a different offense, I might not feel that way. Because the Seahawks have got the Shane Waldron offense, and I can actually go and watch, a series of games at Kentucky where he played in that offense. I can see the translation, and I would take him. And also, I've had the opportunity to speak to Will Levis and speak to people at Kentucky, so I know a bit more about him than maybe other people do. So I would personally take him. That would be my answer to that. But for other teams, I would look at it. But the thing is, Adam, is this is like, what do you want to come out the Wilson trade with? What does the Wilson trade have to materialize to? And for me, if trading down and taking, I don't know, Bijan Robinson or Peter Skoronski to replace Damian Lewis, or I really like Devin Witherspoon, but he hasn't run a 40. It's like, okay, we're going to take a cornerback who hits like a linebacker, but we don't know how big his upside is. That for me, it doesn't make any sense. That doesn't excite me. For the prospects of having another pick next year that could be like the 25th pick. The Seahawks have looked out here, courtesy of Russell and the Broncos. They've got the number 5 pick. Make that count. This has to be a premium position addition for a star player or someone that you believe can be a star player. And I think Levis, Anderson, Richardson, Stroud, and Young fit the bill in that regard. Young would be, I understand why everybody loves Young. I'd have there is a bit of me that about the size that worries a little bit, but I would still take him if it was him that was there at 5. But I would have no hesitation making that pick. A few more super chats. Lucas says, if you are the front office, you cannot, I repeat, cannot allow the Cardinals to do the much anticipated pick swap with Indy. Need Anthony Richardson or Anderson, says Lucas. And I can see that. Blitzy says, isn't this the most exciting offseason in recent memory? And aren't we super fortunate to have the rebuild as our guide? I have a hunch they want Richardson, but I admit that I'm biased. Go Hawks. You can't not watch Anthony Richardson's pro day and not think, I want to see this MFer in Seattle throwing a DK Metcalf with Ken Walker in the backfield. You just can't. I mean, that'd just be so exciting. Like, football's supposed to be fun. Like, just imagine rocking up every Sunday, or in our case, putting on Game Pass, and just watching Anthony Richardson throw into like 2 of the best athletes in the NFL on your offense. The explosion, the excitement. And you know what? There might be a crap pass or an overthrow pass or an interception every now and again, but just think how cool that'll be to watch. It'll be great. It'll be really entertaining. And I know the Bills haven't won a Super Bowl under Josh Allen, but who would want to watch that? Who doesn't want to watch that? The Bills don't have a ton of stars. They've got Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Anthony Richardson and DK together. Tyler. Get another receiver. Be exciting. Save the Geese, which is possibly my favorite username on the super chat, says, love the streams, Rob. Best coverage out there. Although Geese can be quite vicious, so be careful. I think there's another one that's coming. This from Garth. It says, any chance the Cards brass think Jamal Adams is as great as some Seahawks fans? Maybe we could get 20 and Jamal to get to number 3. Unfortunately, you can't do that. The only way that you can get any kind of cap relief from Jamal Adams is to either completely rework his contract, and he'd have to accept that to go to Arizona, which I don't know why he would. And otherwise, it has to be post-June 1st, and that's obviously after the draft. So I'm afraid the Seahawks are stuck with Jamal unless they post-June 1st him. And they're saying over and over again they're not going to. So I think that's a done deal there. So anyway, we've talked about number 3. I do want to talk a bit about free agency. Maybe if we've got time, we'll look at that mock draft I was going to talk about initially when I emailed Robbie saying let's do a stream. What do we think of free agency, Robbie? So Bobby Wagner's back, as you can tell. It was what I was rooting for all along. So Bobby Wagner is back, and the D line is different. It's certainly fewer people at the D line at the moment, and they're going to have to spend some draft picks to address that. But how do you feel about their free agency period? Because there's definitely a lot of positive reviews out there, isn't there, about what they've been able to get done so far, Robbie?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back and just say I really like that they came out and attacked with the Draymond Jones, and then I think the Julian Love is an underrated signing. I know it's quite a bit expensive, but just for the simple fact by the amount of that we're paying our safety positions, but I really like what they've done. I think Bobby, we've talked about this about, maybe it's just time to move on. I'll tell you what, watching our linebackers play last year, Bobby Wagner is better than Cody Barton, and he's better. He's just better than the linebackers we have. So, it's a 1-year deal. I'm glad they didn't like go out and try to do some ridiculous 2-3 year thing. I think it's probably going to be just nostalgic to have him back, and I think that's okay. I'm more interested to see now what they do with their cap space and who goes and what that actually means, because I think that's where it starts to get a little dicey for me. And I wish Curtis was on so he could kind of give us a breakdown of that, because he's really good at the numbers there. But I just none of it, like you said, post June 1st cut with Jamal Adams is away. Extending a couple players might help out as well, or trading Noah Fant would be another way to save another 6.8 million. So there's things that can be done, but I'm interested to see like how much they're going to extend that and like what they're going to do to kind of get under that cap, so they're able to get more players and get their draft pick signed, because that's going to be another issue.
Adam, what do you make of Seattle's free agency period?
I think they've probably done about as well as they could with the resources they had, but I think it's also a fairly stern reminder to us that this team is still quite a way away from having a roster that you would look at and say is complete in all areas to really make an attack on something going forward. I mean, Devin Bush was signed and he has been signed to play as a linebacker, but you could pay one of us $3 million and say we're a linebacker. It doesn't necessarily mean you've got someone that competently fills the position. And look, they've filled those spots with Bobby Wagner and Devin Bush, and that may work. It also may not work. And I think you do get to the position, amongst the fan base where, when someone plays for someone else, well, they're not worth $2 bob. And then when they come to you, it's like, they were a first round pick, and at Michigan, this guy was so good. And they still strike me as having a lot to do. And in a weird way, this kind of feels like even more of a transitional season than last year was when I look at the names down on paper. Maybe I've got a complete misread on that, but there just seem to be a number of areas where you would have hoped, having basically spent the money they've got to spend. I think I maybe hoped there would be more concrete holes filled, as opposed to sort of with a piece of cardboard, which is in some areas how it feels to me at the moment.
I really liked the Draymond Jones signing, because I think it just showed, I think a few of us have said, look, okay, it's all well and good having your way of doing things, but if it keeps consistently not producing results, doing the same thing over and over and over again isn't going to get you anywhere. And I'd rather than take a chance. And if Draymond Jones doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Like, they've taken a chance, they've shot the shot. We've said that a few times, and I like that. I think it needed that. They needed to roll the dice on somebody, and I'd much rather than roll the dice on a free agent in a great age than spend 2 first-round picks and a box safety and try and change things that way. So I was happy with that. I like the Jaron Reed signing. I like the Julian Love signing for their scheme, because they are going to play a lot of 3 safety stuff. They've said that. They've confirmed that again. The Bobby Wagner thing, I'm not going to get heads up over. It's a $5.5 million cap hit this year. It is what it is. I would have rather gone fast and young there, but I also look at this draft. I keep looking at this draft class at linebacker. It stinks. Like, people keep going on about Jack Campbell, because he ran slightly faster than everybody thought. People are going crazy about his 4.2 something short shuttle. That's not an elite short shuttle for a linebacker. Cody Barton ran in the 4.1s. That's the range that has been seen to be like an elite short shuttle at that size. So he's not that spectacular, and he looks stiff as a board on tape. So I just can't, like, Trenton Simpson's overrated. Drew Sanders hasn't tested as well as would have hoped. He didn't do anything at the combine. I can't get behind the linebackers. So just, all right, you sign Bobby Wagner for $5.5 million. It gives everybody nice feels, and let's see what he can do. But the problem is now, guys, is they need snaps. They need people who are going to be able to suck up some snaps on that D-line And with rookies, there's always a chance that they're not going to pick up the scheme and they're not going to be able to, that they'll hit a rookie wall 14 games in. And that's the problem. That is the slight issue there, because they don't have any money. My dog is having a sneezing fit in the background, so apologies if you can hear that. And if you're wondering what that is. But they haven't got the money to go and sign some veterans now to fill this out. I do feel, it does feel a little bit like they made a concerted effort to get younger on the defensive line and to have a slightly different approach there. In the mock draft that I did, I had them taking Will Anderson, but he's an edge anyway, and it's the defensive front. I had them taking Adetomiwa Adebaware, because he can play up front and be a defensive end in this scheme. I had them taking Jacqueline Roy, who is a nose tackle from LSU, played a ton of snaps for LSU, and that's the main reason why I had them taking him. And I had them taking Byron Young at Alabama. So that's 3 sort of big-bodied front defenders who can take up those snaps and provide an impact. And what I would say is, even if the Seahawks take a quarterback, or if they trade up, as provided they keep those picks or some of those picks, they can still add those players, guys. They can still go and do all of those things. It's just if they are going to start trading picks away, they can't add those players and get a center, which will piss Robbie off. They can't do all those things, get a center and a tight end or a receiver and a running back or whatever it is, that's I think there's room for a luxury pick with the picks they've got right now to sort of plan ahead or get a skill position player. But you lose that if you're going to start trading picks away from this year. So that's how I would view it. I just think it's very clear, Robbie, that they're going to have to draft a defensive line, which it kind of backs them into a corner a little bit here. But as I was doing my mock draft earlier, I did actually think, in certain spots, defensive linemen might be among the best players available anyway. So it's not such a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I noticed about the mock draft. And I've done it a couple times myself. I've been using multiple different draft simulators to kind of figure out how it could. Sometimes I'll do everyone and try to, do worst case scenario. But even worst case scenario, we end up getting some really good defensive line players. So I think this is actually a fairly decent defensive line draft. So I'm interested to see kind of how they approach it. And yeah, I would be really pissed off if we didn't get a center in the draft. But yeah, I just the linebacker position, like you said, is not great. I see a lot of people, talking about Drew Sanders as well, and some of these guys, and I'm not overly excited about them. So I think if you can get younger on the D line, that's a good way to go. I just think you got an opportunity to really, you can really build the defensive up, I think, in this draft. I think you have an opportunity to do that, just maybe not at that linebacker position.
Yeah, and like, where do we think the Seahawks are? I mean, I think this could actually be a really enjoyable season if they had a quarterback in the hutch that you could kind of think, I can be excited about the future. I can be excited about Anthony Richardson, Adam. I think you could kind of treat this season as a free hit, a bit like last year. You could go, don't need to worry. They've invested in a major upside quarterback. I'm just going to root the heck out for the team and hope that they can have the best year possible, knowing that draft position doesn't matter. Any of that stuff doesn't really matter. They've got a quarterback. It's just about giving him time to be ready now. Let's hope that Geno Smith and this team can have a good season. Let's hope we can beat the Niners and enjoy that or something. Have a bit of fun in the playoffs and whatnot. Not scoreboard watching for the Broncos every week. You're just sort of focusing on the Seahawks again. I think it could actually be quite a fun season. I think what wouldn't be fun, and this is the problem with my mock draft and not sort of trading up if that's what happens, is that there'll always be that sort of lingering thought for me week to week if Geno Smith is playing more like Geno Smith did at the back end of last season, that like you don't have a top 5 pick next year. Geno Smith's not really getting it done. What the F happens now? Like, you're not going to be, people go, oh, well, yeah, but it's a good quarterback class next year. Well, all right. So Caleb Williams and Drake May are going to be the top 2 picks, are they? How are you going to get there? Are you going to trade your next 3 first-round picks? What if you pick an 18th? That's quite hard to do. You're not, the Niners went from 12 to 3, I think. If you're going to go from like 18 to 1, what's that going to cost you? I mean, look how much it cost the Panthers to move up from 9 to 1. It was a lot. So, you're going to trade away everything to move up to number 1 or number 2. Is Michael Penix good enough in round 2 or 3 to think that's that sorted? That's that position addressed. That could get quite painful, Adam. Sort of that thought as you're kind of sitting there going, where is the answer here? And maybe that is a conversation that Pete and John have had, that they've said, look, do you know what? Let's just get this done. Get a quarterback in. Don't have to worry about it anymore. We can build the rest of the team up, so that if the sort of the peak for this is 2025, when Anthony Richardson's maybe ready and after I had 3 years in the system, Adam, or 2 years in the system, he's preparing for his 3rd year, that gives you 2 more off seasons, doesn't it? To improve the team to a level where you could maybe have a serious go at this. So I'm almost inclined to say, what's the rush? You don't have to have a complete roster this year. People are sending me tweets now. I hate this idea of trading up because we have too many defensive needs. Well, okay, but what if all of the defensive needs aren't going to be addressed this year? What if some of them are going to be addressed this year? What if some of them are going to be addressed next year? And actually, this is a build. It's not a all in for 2023.
I totally agree. And I think, a lot of teams find themselves in a position whereby they're perennially fine and therefore don't end up in a position where they can get themselves a quarterback and end up being in that sort of middle tier. And then you're kind of nowhere. I think the prism we were able to look through last season was that we'd had 4 or 5 quite stressful, dull, frustrating years really previous with, they always looked, they were trying to fetch and reach and get a player to try and make it happen this year, when in reality it was never going to happen, and disappointing playoff losses. I think last year was almost like a year of where we could just relax our way through it, and it was fun watching Gino on a low paid contract doing what he was doing. It was so much fun rooting against the Broncos to see where we were going to end up at the end of the season, and there wasn't really that much focus on sort of what was the future of Seattle. It was kind of let's just take a deep breath, enjoy our football this year and see what happens. I don't think we're going to have that luxury this year. I think people are going to be more focused about the future of this team and where's this team going now. And I think when you are paying the quarterback more money, some of the errant throws become slightly more frustrating because you're investing more in every throw that's being made. And I do think if you don't have a quarterback behind him that you can say, well, look, we'll get through this year. We've got Richardson coming next year and another draft to flesh out the defense. I could see it becoming quite frustrating. And you're right. Basically this idea, well, what are we going to do now? Because we've got the 17th pick, a decent defense and no quarterback. And that could lead to an elongated rebuild because you've got to either go up or down without the resources to do either.
And it all comes back, Robbie, to me, to the sort of the way that Seahawks fans, I think the sort of the Russell divorce hurt a lot of fans in a way that they perhaps have ever been willing to admit. They've kind of taken it out on Wilson a little bit because it did hurt them, that he wanted to leave and wanted to move on. And Geno Smith arrives, and his message is, I'm all in. I'm here. He says all the right things to the media, and he goes and beats Russell Wilson in week 1, and then he suddenly plays brilliantly in those first stretch of games to start the season. And people feel so loyal to him now, Robbie, that they believe that the Seahawks have got the answer, that they found their man, that they want him to succeed. They don't actually. It would also be an affront to Geno Smith to suggest that he needs like a long-term replacement, that this is not on. But I keep coming back to this, Robbie, and I think you mentioned it today already. How could this team have ever thought we're going to trade Russell Wilson and see how it goes? We'll just sort of play it by ear. Who knows what we're going to do? They'll have had a plan. They will have had a plan for what is the future. And I am convinced, Robbie, that the day after they made that trade, they were like, our plan is to take a quarterback in 2023. That this is not a draft coming up in the 2022 draft. They'll have done the homework. But Pete wasn't going to any flipping pro days. I don't think John was going to any of the pro days. Because, they weren't early enough to pick these guys anyway. But it was never even a discussion, really. They didn't even take these guys in round 2 and 3. They were never interested in any of these guys. And now they're showing a lot of interest. It speaks to Robbie, I think, to our plan was to take one of these guys, and maybe they've just decided we're going to go with that and do it. And that was the plan. We're sticking to the plan. This is John's plan, and we're rolling with it. And there was something really interesting the way that Pete spoke to Steve Weish again. He was saying, John's having a great time. John's loving this. This is John's sort of time to shine. It's John. It seemed a lot to me like Pete was in no uncertain terms there, Robbie. You're drinking out of a jar, by the way. That is a fantastic drink. You are drinking out of a jar.
Mason jar.
Moonshine.
It's straight vodka.
But so I've completely lost my train of thought. I think what he was saying there in no uncertain terms was, I think he was kind of giving us a hint that John's running the show in terms of the roster build here, and that Pete is the coach. They're still working together. They're still communicating. They're still discussing what they're going to do. But ultimately, I just wonder if the final call is John's. And that's what he was kind of saying.
Yeah, and I think it comes down just to the simple fact, like, people say build up your roster, then go get your quarterback. And that's a fine strategy, but look at all the teams that are a quarterback away and they're struggling, right, to find that quarterback. We're in a position to get that quarterback now, let them sit behind Geno. And hey, maybe Geno comes in, and maybe last year he was just dusting off or getting some of the rust off, and he's going to light it up this year. Maybe that's possible. And if he does, great. Then what happens? Now we have a trade chip, right? We're not gonna trade the first round pick, but that guy can learn under Geno, and then in 2 years' time, you could trade Geno for a third or something, kind of like the Patrick Mahomes, Alex Smith scenario, and then you have a new guy coming in to start. I mean, I've said it before, this is a luxury pick, and for us to be in this position, with the Russ trade, is you want to come away. In my opinion, I feel like you got to come away with that quarterback of the future, someone that's going to play the next 10 years. And people can say, well, Geno's the guy. Well, Geno can be the guy for 3 years, but he isn't the long-term answer. Like, if we can get somebody now, I know we have a lot of holes, but we can still fill those holes through the rest of the draft and through next year's draft. This isn't going to be like, oh, we fill all the holes this year on defense in this one draft, and all of a sudden we're Super Bowl bound. That's just not realistic. You know what I mean? Sorry.
Your child is there.
My son's coming in to say, hey.
I enjoy the instructions. I think it's cool.
Go say hi.
It's cool.
Yeah. So anyways,
Hey,
that's my opinion. Is I feel like if you have an opportunity to get that quarterback of the future, you go for it and build the roster up throughout that. I don't know. I just think this is a good. Who just said somebody said blueprint. I really like it. I think it gave us a good blueprint to do. I'm really distracted right now.
Robbie, is your son a Mariners fan?
He is, yeah.
Is he looking forward to the game?
He is, yeah. I don't think he'll be able to stay up late enough, but he'll give it a good whirl. Huh? You like baseball?
Yeah, good. I can't get my kids into sport. Yeah. It's very difficult. My kids are resisting. We've got some super chats here. This one from Cisco. It's clear that the number 3 pick is for sale. Other teams wouldn't be wasting their time if it wasn't. There's just no need for a smokescreen. Seattle's interest in AR or WL has to be genuine. Thank you for the super chat, Cisco. Really appreciate that. We've got a few more. DJ Jerry Nice says, happy opening day, Robbie. Just back from Arizona.
Oh, nice.
Is that what the team's been training?
Spring training, yeah.
Spring training in the warm weather. I'm having my own spring training next week in the warm weather. Very much looking forward to it. This one from J. Cole. Could it be Joe Cole? Adam, who knows? EIEIO. How would you project our draft to change if we get our quarterback of the future and have to give up 1 to 2 picks too? Great blog, Rob. Thank you, J. Cole, for the $31, which I'm going to assume is a reference to Cam or Will Anderson, who also wears number 31. I don't think that's a coincidence. How would you project our draft to change? If they take the quarterback of the future and they have to give up, it has to be defensive line. It has to be the focus. I do think centre might get pushed back a little bit. Maybe to the middle rounds so they can get those defensive linemen. But then again, I do like some of these mid-round defensive tackles. And the Seahawks, let's be right, Jaron Reed, I think, is the highest defensive tackle they've taken. Everybody else, round 3, round 4. So they might be quite comfortable waiting until round 3, round 4. Cameron Young, Byron Young, people like that might be who they look to. Moro Jomo, rather than Addy, rather than Keon White, rather than people like that. So we have to see. I think it would just troll everybody so much if they took a quarterback first and then like got like a receiver or something, or a tight end with that second pick and just went, So everybody was like, defense. That would be quite amusing. It would amuse me. It wouldn't amuse Seahawks Twitter. But then they didn't like the Ken Walker pick, so there we go. Final super chat. Garth sent another one in. Thank you. Love the hat, Robbie. Luckily, your son didn't have to watch that caliber of baseball when the M's wore it, he says.
For sure. Yeah, true story. Hopefully they get to watch an era where they actually see the Mariners win a World Series. That would be pretty amazing.
Well, when England got to the Euros final, I did tell my son, it's not always like this, mate. You've got to enjoy this. And then he subsequently fell asleep during extra time. DJ Jerry Nice says, only move I haven't liked this season is losing Woods and having nothing at nose tackle. Think he comes back? And are we zoned in on one of the young defensive tackle, nose tackle picks? I think, based on listening to Brady Henderson and a couple of other people, that they just were a bit worried that Woods was, at his age, wouldn't be able to sort of last a full slate of games. And I don't think he'll come back. I think they're going to draft a young nose tackle, but I don't think it's a high pick. People say it might be Marzi Smith, but I think I think Siaka Ika is overrated anyway. But I think sort of Jacqueline Roy, people like that, maybe later on is perhaps the way. And also, I think the nose tackle position's changed a lot, and it could be like a Keanu Benton, something like that. I don't know. It doesn't have to be like a massive 340-pounder in order to do that. Reflect the Suns chucked in a $5 as well. Late super chat. Really appreciate all of those. So look, it's going to be a really interesting period, isn't it? I personally thought that after the Anthony Richardson Pro Day, we would see, if the trade was going to happen, it would happen now, because it was after Trey Lance's Pro Day that the Niners traded up when the Pro Days were done. And I wonder whether in the next week to 10 days, whether we will see a team trade up. Whether it's Seattle or not remains to be seen. But I do wonder before the draft if we will know and have some clarity on what the Seahawks options are. But I continue to think that the pick that Seattle makes first, whether it's at 5 or at 3, will be between CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Will Anderson, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis. That's what I think. And we'll see. And do you know what? Whoever it is, guys, it's fine by me.
Yeah, and that's a great point. We're in a great position. We're going to get one of the top 5 best players in the league or coming out of the draft. I think this is a position we haven't been in a long time. So this is going to be fun regardless. This has really split the fan base. So it's crazy how much argument is going on between everyone over it. And it's this draft just can't get here soon enough. But man, I'm excited for it.
Fellas, it's been a pleasure having you on tonight. Thank you for your company, to Adam and to Robbie. Stay with Seahawks Draft Blog. My big fat mock draft is on there right now, but it may be outdated if you want to believe the reports from Victor Fur and Tony Pulling. But go and check it out anyway. Loads of great content on Seahawks Draft Blog, and the month of glory is coming in April. So stick on to the blog for that. Loads of big content, loads of information and stuff. Yes, Reflect the Sun. I did get the DJ Jerry and I super chat. So thank you for just questioning that. We did get that one in there. Just wanted to make sure that everybody was okay with that. Yes, SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the videos. Hit the notification button. Please like the video because it helps with the algorithm. Please leave a comment in the comment section, even if you've been in the live chat. That also helps the algorithm. The subs are gradually going up, but we can do better than this. So come on, please get those subs up. Let's get them higher and enjoy the next few weeks. Whatever comes will be my message. It's just not worth stressing about. And I have to tell myself, I appreciate it. Well, as I tell myself that, I want to relay that to you all out there as well. Thank you for watching. Until next time, bye for now.